Bourbon Street, known by the world all over as the heart of New Orleans nightlife, was the perfect backdrop for a New Year's Eve celebration. Lined with neon lights, jazz spilling into the streets, and the rhythmic beats of live bands, it was a place where people from every corner of the globe gathered to ring in the new year. Locals and tourists alike flooded the sidewalks, sharing drinks, laughter, and stories of the past year. It was a time of unity, of celebration, a brief escape from the chaos of the world outside. As midnight passed, fireworks lit up the sky, and the revelers poured into the streets, eager to usher in the new year with friends, old and new. The energy was electric, contagious, as the streets of Bourbon became a living, breathing entity, its pulse matching the rhythm of the crowd. But beneath this jubilant surface, a threat was quietly making its way toward the heart of it all. Unseen, unknown, it was coming to shatter the peace, to turn the city's most celebrated street into a scene of utter devastation. For those who were there, the night they had hoped would be filled with joy would instead be marked by terror. And as the truck raced toward them, there would be no time for escape, no chance to understand what was about to unfold. In those few minutes, Bourbon Street, the street that symbolized life, celebration, and hope, became ground zero for something that would change the city and its people forever. The joy of the night vanished in a split second, replaced by a fear unlike any they had known. The people in the crowd had no warning, no time to react, only moments to flee or face the unimaginable. At precisely 15 minutes past 3 a.m. on January 1st, the usual hum of Bourbon Street was shattered by the screech of tires. A rented Ford F-150 pickup truck roared down Canal Street, its headlights slicing through the darkness. The vehicle moved with purpose, barreling toward the heart of New Orleans at an unervingly high speed. The crowd, drunk on celebration, had no idea what was coming, no inkling that the joyful night they'd been anticipating was about to turn into a deadly nightmare. Without hesitation, the truck veered around barricades, cutting through the street with deliberate intent. There was no veering off course, no uncertainty. It wasn't a random act of recklessness. This was something planned, something deadly. It crashed into the crowd with a force that sent people flying in every direction. Bodies were flung into the air as the truck plowed through them, its driver seemingly hell-bent on creating as much carnage as possible. One eyewitness, still trembling from the horror, described it as bodies flying through the air, as the screams of terrified victims filled the night. The force was overwhelming. What should have been a night of joy was now a scene of unimaginable destruction. As the truck came to a stop, the crowd, still in shock, scattered in every direction. But the nightmare wasn't over. The driver, whose actions had already sealed the fates of so many, didn't stop there. Without a moment's hesitation, he leaped from the vehicle and drew a weapon, firing at the responding officers who had arrived on the scene. The situation quickly escalated into a deadly shootout, the sounds of gunfire ringing out in the early morning air. Law enforcement, already on high alert from the chaos, immediately returned fire. The confrontation was brief, but violent. In a matter of seconds, the suspect was fatally shot by officers, his body collapsing to the ground. The street, once filled with celebration, now stood silent but for the cries of the wounded and the echoes of gunshots. No one could have predicted this turn of events. As the dust began to settle, one thing became painfully clear. This was no ordinary attack. Thank you for your support and engagement. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more true crime updates. Investigators began combing through the scene for any clues that might explain the horrors that had just unfolded. What they uncovered raised even more questions. Amidst the wreckage and chaos, authorities found something, a potential explosive device left near the scene. The discovery was a stark reminder of just how much worse the situation could have been. Was this a planned attack with further devastation in mind, or was it a singular moment of madness? The authorities were working to confirm if the device was viable, but the fact that it had been planted in the first place raised serious concerns. The FBI and local law enforcement are left scrambling for answers. Was the attack an isolated event, or was there a larger, more dangerous plan at play? The questions remain, and so does the unsettling uncertainty. The man behind the carnage in New Orleans was quickly identified as 42-year-old Shamsud-Din Jabbar, a U.S. military veteran with a troubling history. Jabbar had served in the military for over 13 years, including a deployment to Afghanistan, before being discharged in 2020. His military background raises disturbing questions. Was his time in the service, and particularly his experiences in a conflict zone like Afghanistan, a contributing factor to his eventual radicalization? Could the hardships and trauma of war have led him down a darker path? Or was there something else that played a role in shaping his devastating actions? Before the attack, Jabbar seemed to lead an ordinary life. He earned a degree in computer information systems from Georgia State University and secured a position with the consulting firm Deloitte, where he earned $10,000 a month. On paper, he was a man of accomplishment, respected in his field. But underneath the surface, signs of personal turmoil were emerging. Court records paint a portrait of a man in crisis. Jabbar's financial situation had reached a breaking point. In 2022, he was $27,000 behind on his mortgage payments and drowning in $16,000 in credit card debt. With no immediate solution in sight, his life seemed to be spiraling out of control. At the same time, Jabbar was going through a painful divorce, further compounding his emotional distress. His separation from his wife marked the end of a chapter, but it also seemed to signal the beginning of a darker, more destructive path. These personal struggles, financial instability, a crumbling marriage, may have been the tipping point. Could these crises, combined with the pressure of living up to societal expectations, have contributed to Jabbar's radicalization? Could his own sense of failure, anger, and isolation have pushed him to seek a sense of purpose in extremist ideologies? Do you think personal hardship played a role in Jabbar's decision to commit this act? Was he simply a victim of his circumstances? Comment below. As the investigation into Jabbar's life unfolded, the authorities uncovered evidence of his radicalization. Most notably, an ISIS flag was discovered in the vehicle he used during the attack. This flag was a stark symbol, pointing to a possible link to one of the most notorious terrorist organizations in the world. The FBI's investigation quickly turned to whether Jabbar had ties to ISIS or other extremist groups. Further details came to light that painted a more disturbing picture. Authorities revealed that Jabbar had posted extremist videos online, expressing a desperate desire to kill. These social media posts gave a glimpse into the man's growing radical beliefs, suggesting that his actions were not the result of a spontaneous outburst, but rather the culmination of a much darker transformation. The question remained: was this a lone act of terror, or was Jabbar part of a wider network of extremists? The FBI was focused on uncovering any potential connections. As the investigation continues, the nation waits for more answers. The aftermath of the attack left a devastating toll on New Orleans. 15 lives were tragically cut short, each representing a story unfinished, a future stolen. Among the victims was Martin "Tiger" Beck, a beloved Princeton University football player whose bright future was extinguished in an instant. Known for his dedication on the field and his kindness off it, Beck's loss was felt far beyond the city limits of New Orleans. Eyewitnesses who survived the horror recounted scenes of chaos and despair. One witness described it vividly: bodies thrown in the air, screaming everywhere. It felt like a nightmare, but it was real. These words capture only a fragment of the terror experienced that night. The families of the victims are now left grappling with unimaginable grief, forced to face the harsh reality that their loved ones will never return. The emotional toll on the city cannot be overstated. New Orleans, a place celebrated for its resilience and spirit, is now burdened with collective trauma. In the wake of the tragedy, New Orleans finds itself at a crossroads. A city famed for its vibrant culture, jazz-filled streets, and lively celebrations is now shadowed by sorrow. For a place that thrives on tourism and hospitality, this attack struck at the very heart of its identity. The usually jubilant streets of Bourbon Street now bear scars, both physical and emotional, from that night. One immediate consequence was the delay of the highly anticipated Sugar Bowl college football game, an event that draws thousands of fans and generates significant revenue for the city. The game was postponed by 24 hours, but the excitement surrounding it was undeniably overshadowed by grief and fear. The tragedy also raises broader questions about safety in public spaces and the preparedness of authorities to handle such events in the future. Will New Orleans be able to reclaim its image as a safe, welcoming city for tourists and residents alike? In the days following the New Orleans attack, the FBI has intensified its investigation, officially treating the incident as a potential act of terrorism. However, despite the discovery of an ISIS flag in Jabbar's rented truck and his social media activity hinting at extremist ideologies, authorities remain cautious in drawing definitive conclusions. The FBI's silence on key evidence has sparked growing frustration and speculation among the public and experts alike. Why is the FBI so hesitant to release more details? Is it to protect ongoing investigations, or are they grappling with conflicting evidence? It's clear that Jabbar's actions were intentional, but whether they were driven by a deep allegiance to an extremist ideology or the unraveling of a troubled personal life remains unclear. The line between terrorism and personal vendetta is thin, and the FBI seems determined not to misstep as they work through the complexities of this case. Colin Clark, a leading expert in counterterrorism from the Sofan Center, has weighed in on the matter. He pointed out the unusual profile of Shamsud-Din Jabbar, an older suspect with military experience and no previously known extremist ties. Clark noted, "There's a number of red flags, including the attacker's age and military background. It's not the typical profile for radicalization." This raises critical questions. Was this a meticulously planned act of terror aimed at causing mass casualties and fear? Or was it a desperate outburst from a man crushed by financial debt, emotional distress, and a crumbling personal life? Some experts lean towards terrorism, citing the ISIS flag, the explosive device found near the scene, and Jabbar's alleged social media activity. Others point to the deeply personal struggles evident in court records and his recent divorce as contributing factors to a final, violent breakdown. The truth, for now, lies in a murky gray area between terrorism and personal vendetta. A line investigators are meticulously working to define. The FBI continues to chase every lead, working around the clock to determine whether Jabbar acted alone or had co-conspirators. Investigators are scrutinizing his digital footprint, financial transactions, and any known associates who might offer insight into his motivations. Meanwhile, the public grows impatient. Families of the victims demand answers. Communities affected by the attack are left with more questions than closure. The media amplifies the uncertainty, and speculation continues to cloud the narrative. Authorities are walking a tightrope, balancing transparency with the need to protect the integrity of the investigation. But one thing remains clear. Every detail uncovered could change the course of the investigation and how this tragedy will be remembered in history. What's your take on this being classified as a terror attack? Does the evidence so far point to terrorism, or is this more about personal revenge? Share your thoughts in the comments below. With Shamsud-Din Jabbar dead, the typical path of justice, a public trial and sentencing, will not unfold. But the investigation doesn't end with his death. The FBI remains focused on uncovering any potential co-conspirators who may have aided or influenced Jabbar's actions. If others are found to have been involved, whether through direct assistance, financial support, or ideological encouragement, they will face prosecution under federal anti-terrorism laws. But this raises deeper questions. Should authorities have seen this coming? Could the signs of Jabbar's deteriorating mental state, financial hardship, and online activities have been addressed before this tragedy occurred? Was there a failure in the systems designed to prevent such individuals from slipping through the cracks? The public, too, demands accountability. In the aftermath of such devastation, blame often becomes part of the conversation. Should the rental platforms that allowed Jabbar to access the vehicle bear responsibility? Should law enforcement have responded differently during the pursuit and confrontation? These are not easy questions to answer, but they must be asked and answered if meaningful change is to follow. As investigations continue, the government faces mounting pressure to address these systemic failures and ensure a tragedy of this scale does not repeat itself. Do you think authorities could have done more to prevent this tragedy? And should others involved, if any, face public trial? Share your thoughts below. In the immediate aftermath, city officials have already started discussing enhanced security measures. Will there be stricter barriers during public events? Will surveillance and law enforcement presence increase during high-profile celebrations like New Year's Eve and Mardi Gras? But increased security comes with its own challenges. How do you balance safety with preserving the free-spirited, celebratory essence of a city like New Orleans? For businesses that rely on tourism, the ripple effects of fear and uncertainty are already being felt. Restaurants, bars, and hotels worry about cancellations and reduced visitor numbers. Rebuilding trust, both locally and with the millions of tourists who visit New Orleans every year, will be one of the city's greatest challenges. But history shows that this city has always risen from tragedy with unyielding determination. The question now is, how long will it take this time? The scars of this tragedy will not fade overnight. For the families of the 15 victims, life will never return to what it was before January 1st. They will live with empty chairs at family dinners, silenced laughter, and milestones left uncelebrated. For the survivors, the dozens injured physically and the hundreds more affected emotionally, the healing process will be long and fraught with challenges. Some will struggle with PTSD, others with survivor's guilt, and many with the fear of ever feeling truly safe again in crowded spaces. And for the city as a whole, the weight of this event will linger. Each New Year's Eve, every gathering on Bourbon Street, and every large public celebration will carry echoes of that horrific night. Memorials may be erected, safety protocols will undoubtedly evolve, and conversations about mental health, extremism, and community resilience will become more urgent. But beyond policy changes and physical barriers, the true recovery of New Orleans will depend on its people, their unity, their compassion, and their refusal to let fear define their beloved city. What do you think New Orleans needs most to heal and recover from this tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This story goes beyond just one night. It's about the systems that failed, the warning signs that were missed, and the lingering questions that demand answers. It's about a city's resilience and how it will rise from yet another heartbreaking chapter. As the investigation continues, we'll be here to bring you updates, insights, and the stories of those affected. Thank you for watching, for caring, and for being part of this conversation. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on this story and others like it. Together, let's keep asking the hard questions and seeking the truth. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next video.